We hope you enjoy today's story. I will delineate precisely what I do not wish to hear from you. I do not wish to hear expressions of remorse. I am not interested in hearing that you are sorry after you have been discovered. I am not interested in hearing your reasons for engaging in the act in question. I am not interested in learning whether this was your first infidelity. None of that is relevant to me. What matters is that you did it. You have brought disgrace upon our entire family. It is accurate to conclude that the individual in question did not merely engage in infidelity with me, but also with our 4 children. This action has the potential to negatively impact their future development and the formation of normal childhood relationships. Additionally, the individual's actions have the potential to disrupt the dynamics of their relationship with their grandparents. The individual's actions have resulted in the humiliation of their entire family. In light of these circumstances, it is understandable why the individual would be perceived as a liar and a source of disgrace. However, it is important to note that the individual has consulted with a lawyer, as previously suggested. She corroborated that your threat was likely to be carried out, and that your actions would result in a 10-year period of severe distress for me. I was taken aback to discover that, according to the law, you were the party responsible for our downfall, yet it was I who would suffer the consequences. Rick, I ask you to consider my perspective. I did not intend to threaten you. My intention was to highlight the realities of our situation in a rational manner. I acknowledge that my actions have been deceptive and unfaithful. However, should our 4 children be held responsible for my actions? I understand that the children are of primary importance, but I believe that, in your perspective, the destruction of my life is merely a collateral consequence. Furthermore, I ask that you refrain from addressing me as honey, as I do not consent to such a term. I am simply Rick, and I ask that you respect my wishes. Regarding your affair, I heard you suggest that I should allow you to continue it despite your marital status. I was not aware that I had the option to deny your request. The prospect of my father paying alimony to you and child support for the next 10 years is a significant concern. I recognize that I may not have articulated my thoughts effectively yesterday. I apologize for any confusion. It is not a personal attack against you, but rather a reflection of my own experiences and emotions. I did not love him previously, but I am currently unable to terminate the relationship. I am aware of your assertion that he is more physically attractive and so forth. I am sorry that what I was born with was not sufficient for you, but I would like to present a counterargument. We engaged in sexual intercourse before marriage, so if my physical attributes were inadequate, it was not my fault. It was an error on your part to agree to marry me. In the 15 years and 4 children that have passed since then, I have never heard a single complaint from you about my abilities in bed. This is entirely your responsibility, not mine. I am aware of this, but I would like to try to explain it more clearly. Please allow me to do so. He waved his hands in a gesture of dismissal and returned to his seat. In the years since this issue first arose, have I ever refused you sexual intercourse? Have you ever noticed a decrease in my attention to the family? Have I ever canceled a dinner with you? Anything for which you or the children could reproach me because of my affair. All of this was true, but it only made him angrier because she still didn't understand. Then, she informed me that I was not the primary caregiver for the children and that I was not a good mother. She also stated that I was not the primary source of sexual intimacy for her. Given these circumstances, I was compelled to inform you, Rick, because someone close to us saw me in a compromising position. I did not want you to hear about it from someone else. I must also inform you of the identity of the individual who observed you in a compromising position with your romantic partner. I have not been informed of this by anyone else, and I believe it is important for me to know who my close associate is. I am not going to divulge the information that I am withholding, and I will not speculate as to why I am withholding it. You have chosen not to reveal the name of your romantic partner to me, so I am left with no choice but to respect your decision. The situation continues to deteriorate. I am not disclosing the identity of the individual who observed me, as it is irrelevant and would only cause you unnecessary distress. Similarly, I am not disclosing the identity of my romantic partner, as I am aware that you would resort to aggressive actions against him. It is imperative that I protect the father of our children from incarceration. They require your support. He attempted to inject a note of sarcasm into the conversation, stating, "It would seem that you are the arbiter of my every aspect of life, so I am not particularly distressed by your decision. Could you perhaps elucidate the benefits of me sitting passively in a chair while you engage in sexual intercourse? Sex so I can clean you both up when you're done. Cease your sarcasm, Rick. It is unbecoming and childish. What is a cuckold anyway? It is you, isn't it? Who is acting childish? Kat, you mean to tell me that in the past year, neither of you ever laughed at me, mocked the size of my equipment, or took any other opportunities to humiliate me? On how many occasions did you engage in sexual intercourse with him in my bed, or allow him to consume my alcoholic beverages while I was absent from the premises? I was unaware of this until I returned to find you in a state of considerable agitation. You began to strike me in response to this, but managed to restrain yourself. You stood there rubbing your cheek and jaw to ensure that they were functioning correctly. You were in a state of shock. You were shocked that I had struck you and horrified that you had allowed yourself to become so enraged. He was on the verge of striking her back. He was aware that it was time for him to leave and create some distance between them. She was equally taken aback by her own violent actions against the man she loved. She opened her eyes widely and covered her mouth with her hands. Unable to speak, she began to cry. Everything was falling apart. This was not how she wanted the conversation to go. She came to her senses and began apologizing. She tried to approach Rick, but he pushed her away. Rick, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I know you have no reason to believe me, but He never frequented our family or home, and neither of us ever discussed him. I am uncertain if you believe this, but I can compartmentalize my life when I am with you. He is not a factor in my life, and when I say that, it also means that when you are with him, the children and I are not a factor either. Correct. The cat lowered her head and quietly said, Yes, Rick, that is true, but it is for the best. I was going to say that you could think that I would humiliate you, but given the circumstances, I do not believe that there is any point in arguing about it. However, it is true. That ever happened? Go to hell. I am aware that I am going to do a DNA test on the children's cat. She gathered herself to slap him again, but he grabbed her hand and spoke threateningly. Do not attempt that again. I am doing my best to maintain my composure, and, frankly, given your actions over the past few months, I have no obligation to be civil with you. Okay, Rick, I understand, but we need to find a way to resolve this. My friend is out of our lives. You mean that individual in question? It was a statement, not a question, and the venom inside him was palpable. In response to his assertion, HEK stated that Rick is not a scumbag. HEK then proceeded to justify Rick's actions, characterizing him as a good guy who engages in extramarital relationships. However, HEK then posed a question that was both direct and loaded with implications. Should I get tested for STDs? The implication was clear. HEK was suggesting that Rick might be infected with sexually transmitted diseases. The question was followed by another, even more loaded one. How many other wives is he sleeping with? The implication was that there might be a significant number of infected women. In response to this line of questioning, HEK suggested that both he and his partner should undergo regular testing. This was not merely a suggestion. It was a demand. The implication was clear. HEK wanted to ensure that he was not putting his partner at risk. While HEK's intentions might have been well-meaning, they were also deeply problematic. Nevertheless, I will proceed with the procedure. I appreciate your disclosure regarding your unprotected sexual intercourse with him. Following the birth of our youngest child, I was required to use protection until I underwent a surgical procedure to terminate my menses. I am aware of your proclivities. If you were to become pregnant by this individual, would you consider me a mere bystander in your life, a mere collateral damage in your pursuit of raising someone else's child? I am curious to know whether, following my vasectomy, I can anticipate a similar discourse. Listen, Rick, you will raise this child as your own, or I will take everything you hold dear. Is that what I have to anticipate? Such an outcome is highly unlikely. Perhaps we could focus on resolving our issues in a mature and constructive manner. You seem to be suggesting that we should work through our problems in order to maintain your relationship with your partner and remain married to me. I must respectfully decline that suggestion. I am considering leaving the situation before I do something regrettable. In the event of an emergency, you can contact my parents, who will be able to assist you until I am in a position to decide on the best course of action. I will give your suggestion about talking through our issues further consideration, but at this moment in time I am leaning towards divorce as the only viable option. I would appreciate it if you did not contact me again to reiterate your views on the necessity of discussing the matter further. This is my final statement on the matter. You have articulated your position with great clarity. Rick did indeed stay with his parents. He provided them with a detailed account of his conversation with Kat. His father was initially taken aback but expressed support for Rick's decision. He refrained from attempting to influence Rick's choice. Instead, he simply stated that he would be there for him regardless of the outcome. In contrast, Rick's mother was unwavering in her stance. Even from an early age, Rick was aware of her dominant role within the family. She began exerting her influence immediately. As he concluded his narrative, he was met with a barrage of objections. His mother persisted in her attempts to dissuade him from pursuing the relationship, despite his reassurances that he had 4 children who relied on him and that he was merely seeking to coexist with his wife. She questioned his understanding of the situation, emphasizing that his wife was engaging in sexual relations with another man and expected him to accept it. Ricky's mother urged him to consider the long-term implications of a potential divorce, suggesting that it would be a hasty and irreversible decision. She predicted that his wife's infatuation with the other man would eventually dissipate, and that he would realize the value of their marriage. She urged him to consider divorce, repeating this suggestion day and night, often with tears and pleading. She sometimes resorted to the old admonition, "I'm very disappointed in you, Ricky. We raised you better," which he found particularly painful. Ricky was aware that his parents loved their grandchildren dearly. However, he also observed that whenever his mother began to nag, his father would attempt to avoid her. His father would attempt to avoid being alone with him. His father reassured Rick that he would support any decision Rick made, but he never made such a statement when his mother was present. Ultimately, Rick determined that maintaining the family unit was preferable. He recognized the limited options available to him. He felt as though he were a bird trapped in a cage, unable to find a way out. He therefore decided to endure and make the best of a bad situation. He went home and informed his wife that he had decided to stay, citing the desire to ensure that their children did not have to grow up in a broken home. He also stated that he was aware that if he were to leave his wife's lover, the latter would move into the family home in a matter of time. "It is inevitable that my friend will move into my house in the near future. I am unwilling to subject our children to such a situation. Consequently, I will remain here only until Amanda reaches the age of 18. At that point, I will leave. I intend to convert the office into a bedroom because I do not wish to share a bed with you following your sexual relationship with your friend." She stomped her foot and stated, "You will sleep with me." She then informed him that she had been in a relationship with her friend for approximately 1 year. She inquired as to whether he had ever observed or experienced anything that might have aroused his suspicion. He replied in the negative. She then asserted her intention to remain in the relationship and that it was a matter of final. She then asked him to consider the implications of his actions for their children, given that he was staying home. She suggested that they maintain a certain level of decorum and appearances. She then inquired as to his intentions regarding their relationship after the children reached the age of majority. Other children have already left, and Amanda will soon turn 18, so there is no alternative. However, until then, we will continue sleeping together. Kat understood this to mean that she was aware of Rick's feelings for her and that, over time, their relationship would improve. She was determined not to give him any reason to distance himself. She made a vow to herself to be even more careful with her lover. The future would ensure that Rick would not see or feel anything that might anger or hurt him. Of course, the children were pleased that he was back home, but Rick was even happier. He was unable to bear being away from them, even during his business trips. He made it a point to contact them every day and also never forgot to brought them small gifts when he returned home, which elicited a positive response from them. However, initial efforts to improve the situation were unsuccessful. Kat ceased attempting to convince him that everything was fine and instead applied persistent pressure to engage in sexual intercourse with him. However, Rick was unable to comply. He attempted to act in a normal manner, but this proved challenging. An uneasy truce emerged between him and his wife. He found it difficult to remain calm when his wife left the house alone, despite her assertion that she only saw her friend once or twice a week. In his mind, however, it seemed that she was leaving the house alone with her friend every time she left. This caused him significant distress. Despite Kat's best efforts, she was unable to improve her husband's situation. After several challenging weeks, she sought the assistance of a marriage counselor. She believed that Rick was not adapting quickly enough to the new circumstances and that it was crucial to address the deterioration of their relationship. The couple's children began to express their concerns. Rick was taken aback when Kat proposed this idea. He paused to collect his thoughts and then responded, "Let me get this straight. You want me to attend marriage counseling with you, so that I can feel more comfortable while you engage in extramarital relationships." He laughed, but his mirth quickly gave way to a grim expression as he became silent and morose. "Kat, perhaps this is not an entirely misguided notion. We should pursue it." Rick had several reasons for concurring, primarily his curiosity about how Kat would portray her partner to the counselor in order to reinforce their marriage. At the very least, it would be intriguing, but he would select the counselor. That was not to be. Kat readily agreed to this suggestion, and for some inexplicable reason, she felt a thrill of excitement and anticipation. Rick, however, was unable to comprehend the depth of her delusion. The counseling sessions were ultimately successful, much to Kat's surprise. Following 2 or 3 sessions, Rick exhibited a notable increase in affection at home. He ceased yelling at her and no longer displayed sulky behavior. The counselor was also impressed, primarily because he simply pointed out to Rick that societal norms were irrelevant. What mattered was what Rick and Kat considered normal. As time passed, he encountered an increasing number of similar cases in his practice, and the outcomes were consistently unfavorable. Upon completing the 10-session program, he considered writing an article for Psychology Today, with the hope of offering insights that could benefit couples across the country. Consequently, he continued to reside with Rick and Kat, whose marriage could not be described as ideal. By any objective measure, they enjoyed a cordial relationship and collaborated effectively to provide their children with optimal early experiences. From an external perspective, their marriage appeared to be more stable than that of many other couples. Following the conclusion of counseling, their sexual intimacy resumed at a level that was perceived as normal by both parties. Rick and Kat did not discuss her male friend again. Rick was aware that he was disregarding a potentially relevant detail but saw no compelling reason to bring it up. One incident caused Rick such distress that it led him to consider breaking their agreement. Approximately 6 years later, Rick received a call from his father requesting his immediate presence. Kat noticed the change in his demeanor. His demeanor was serious, and his expression conveyed concern. "Something is wrong. You're scaring me. I'm uncertain, but I believe my mother may be unwell. My father instructed me to proceed immediately." "I'll accompany you," he said, but she replied, "I'll go alone." Kat's expression reflected concern, as she held his parents in high regard, almost as much as her own. "Okay," she replied, but her tone indicated uncertainty. "Please inform me of the situation as soon as possible." He promised he would, and proceeded to his childhood residence. Upon arrival, he observed that both his parents were seated in the living room. His father appeared angry, while his mother had evidently been crying, which only served to heighten his anxiety. His father spoke first, addressing him as Rick. "I want you to. I only became aware of this yesterday, and I am extremely displeased with your mother." He then exited the room. "What is the situation?" "Mom, Ricky, I have something to tell you, and it will be painful. I never desired this outcome. My intention was merely to maintain the integrity of your family. You are aware of my affection for your grandchildren. Please, Mom, tell me." I observed the couple in question together on numerous occasions, including once when I was meeting Doris for lunch. "How could you do this to me? The children were just babies, and they needed both parents." She continued talking, but he did not hear the rest. He was stunned, as if his own mother had just told him something he did not want to hear. Rick departed without uttering another syllable. Upon returning home, he was besieged by Kat with a plethora of inquiries. However, he merely informed her that his parents were concerned about the sufficiency of funds to cover the children's college expenses. He stated that they were striving to resolve the issue and that they would provide assistance to the extent possible. As they age, they become increasingly anxious. It is not uncommon for older individuals to experience this. I am relieved to hear that you have reassured them that there is no cause for concern." Rick simply nodded and proceeded to the backyard. It is evident that his relationship with his mother has undergone a significant transformation. They typically interacted with one another, often accompanied by their grandchildren and Kat. However, the intimacy and closeness that previously existed between them has dissipated. The once strong bond between Rick and his mother was irreparably damaged. Similarly, his parents' marriage, which had previously been stable, suffered a significant rupture. His father's emotional distress reached such a level that he left home for approximately a month, a period that coincided with his wife's deceit. Unfortunately, his father passed away approximately a year after this encounter, leaving Rick to grapple with the tragedy. He experienced several periods of profound sadness in the days and weeks following his father's death. To her credit, Kat was with him every step of the way and helped him overcome his depression. Rick's resolve to leave his wife began to waver. He struggled, but he came to recognize that his wife loved him and was trying to be with him. This realization led him to doubt his decision. Their oldest child went off to college, and the next two followed shortly after. Amanda, who would soon reach the age of 18, had already completed her high school education and was preparing to attend state college. The years spent raising a child, especially through high school, passed in a relatively short period of time. Around the same time, his mother passed away. The experience of losing a parent is inherently complex and arduous. There is a common saying that being an only child has both advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, there is no sibling to argue with. On the other hand, there is no sibling to share the burden. His parents left him enough money to ensure that all of their children could receive a college education without being burdened by student loan debt. While perusing the documents, Rick discovered a handwritten missive from his mother, addressed to him. The envelope bore only the inscription, "To Rick, after I'm gone." He placed it in his pocket and resolved to peruse it at a later time. In the aftermath of his mother's demise, Rick opted to remain with Kat. The pain and anger had subsided, and he felt he had a better life than most, so why rock the boat? Additionally, he saw how lonely his mother had been and was concerned that the same thing might happen to him if he left Kat. Amanda was ready to leave for college, and he was already beginning to suffer from emptiness syndrome. He placed the letter in a drawer and forgot about it for several weeks. One day, while searching through his belongings, he discovered the letter and decided to read it. What he read shocked him, and he was initially unable to comprehend its implications. He questioned whether the content was accurate or if it had been fabricated. His mother was merely attempting to present a more favorable image in the wake of her demise. He resolved to discard the letter and refrain from disclosing its contents. With less than a year remaining before Amanda's 18th birthday and her subsequent enrollment in college, he frequently contemplated the letter, its contents influencing his future decisions. The day after Amanda's departure for school, he sat down next to the cat. "I've consulted with a lawyer and I'm going to divorce you. Will you go to the office to sign the papers or should I have you served? I don't want to embarrass you, but it's time for me to move on. However, I'm perplexed as to why we've been so good all these years. After all, I don't love you, Kat. And we agreed I'd stay until..." Amanda reached the age of 18. It became evident that Rick did not love her, nor did he love his cat. His feelings for her had not diminished gradually. They had ended abruptly when he was threatened. He felt it was time to leave, as they had agreed to do so 10 years ago. He was aware that their paths would cross again due to their children and grandchildren. Therefore, he would be polite, but their relationship was over. He acknowledged that Rick had held his hand on numerous occasions and had told him that their sexual encounters were not real. However, he understood the distinction between sex and love, and Rick had engaged in sexual intercourse with him. It took some time, but after a few months, their sexual intercourse gradually transformed into a more intimate and emotionally charged experience, which I now recognize as a form of romantic love. I deliberately misled you, Kat, because I wanted to maintain the pretense of a loving relationship. Alcott was openly crying, but she remained silent, merely shaking her head in negation. This realization struck me with a profound impact. I understood that you could have divorced me at any time and for any reason. Do you know why I agreed to counseling? We reside in a no-fault state, where divorce can be filed for any reason, even if it was merely a mistake, such as forgetting to take out the trash or missing your birthday. What if, over time, you had fallen in love with your new romantic interest? I would have become a mere time dead. You held all the power in our relationship. I was unable to take that risk, so I focused on being the best father I could be and pretended with you. I don't believe you. I know you love me. I know you do. I would never do anything like that to you. She was hysterically screaming and sobbing uncontrollably. Perhaps only now did she finally grasp the true depth of her actions. Please, Rick, I have to tell you something. I haven't seen my boyfriend or been with anyone else but you for almost 10 years. Am I supposed to believe that? That is a significant risk even for you, Kat. Rick truly believed that Kat would say or do anything to obtain what she wanted. I swear to you that this is the truth. Rick, I have been completely faithful to you for almost 10 years. Why did this happen? You never informed me of any of this. I thought you would not believe me anyway, so I did not tell you. After I informed him that you were aware of our relationship, he began to change. He belittled you, calling you a weak coward. He told me that I should end our relationship with you and said all kinds of perverse things. Things eventually reached a boiling point. I finally reached my limit and slapped him, subsequently ending our intimate relationship. I have not engaged in any further romantic involvement since then, and I have remained exclusively committed to you. Could you clarify how many times you slapped him? I am merely curious. It seems we have reached an equilibrium in this regard. You have chosen to keep this information private for an extended period. Yes, Rick. I have come to realize that the most constructive course of action is to strive for excellence in my roles as a mother and wife. I believe we were doing well in that regard. I must acknowledge that you have been an exemplary mother. I am uncertain how anyone could surpass that level of excellence. I am aware that you will become a great grandmother, but I must inform you that the pain I am experiencing has not yet dissipated. I will also acknowledge your efforts to be a devoted spouse. I am aware that the intimacy we shared prior to your infidelity has not been fully restored, but I could discern that you were striving to reconnect and that you still held feelings for me. Our relationship never reached the level of a romantic partnership. Rick, I implore you to remain. I am willing to do anything you request to ensure your continued presence in my life. I am compelled to ask you a question. A few years ago, I discovered that it was your mother, who observed your interaction with your romantic partner, reacted with apparent astonishment. Have you ever discussed this with her? After a considerable interval, she replied in the negative. She later informed me that on that same day, you confronted her and threatened that if she divulged this information, she would be held responsible for the dissolution of our family and that you would ensure she never laid eyes on her grandchildren again. I did not engage in such actions. However, the account your mother provided bears a striking resemblance to what you informed me of this 10 years ago. However, I am unable to accept your assertion. I am sorry, but I am not persuaded by any argument you might present. I have reached a point where I must pursue my own interests. I have devoted a significant portion of my life to the children, but I now recognize the need to prioritize my own needs. I am compelled to conclude this conversation. The question was whether he was a good father. They assured him that he had been a fantastic father throughout their lives. He was moved to tears by their affirmation of his efforts. Once he composed himself, he told them the unvarnished truth, including their grandmother's involvement. He held nothing back and did not sugarcoat anything. He explained that he had almost left them because he was overwhelmed by anger and shame. They all understood and thanked him for staying with them while they maintained relationships with their mother. Things were never the same. Subsequently, Rick ceased all communication with Kat. He even declined to be in the same room with her, except during the weddings of their children and the birthdays of their grandchildren. Rick embraced an independent lifestyle. He recognized a distinction between solitude and loneliness. He was never lonely because he had an integral role in his children's lives and their respect. Thank you for your attention and for listening until the end. If you found this topic engaging, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment.